It was a slightly warm morning in April when we started up our loaded car and headed for a long road trip to Florida. We were packed and ready for a 2,400-mile round trip to Seacrest Beach and back to Grand Rapids. We were quiet since it was early, but with 4 teenagers in the car that didn't last long. My best friend Jacob and his sister Dom were both invited to go to Florida with my family. We found ourselves doing things to keep ourselves entertained between naps. We began to act goofy like a group of kindergartners from long hours of being trapped in the car. It made for a more interesting ride. On our way to Florida, we stopped at many interesting places, and one of those places was the Mammoth Caves in Kentucky, which were used for mining white and black gunpowder during the Civil War. The caves were also used for treating people who suffered with tuberculosis because the cool, damp atmosphere provided for the people who were suffering from the disease. Some tours are so long and take so much stamina that visitors are warned before beginning the tour that they would not allow anyone with a heart or health condition to take the tour. The guide stands up on a large log and addresses the crowd to let us know the necessary rules for entering the caves. The crowd waits quietly, and when he is finished, they politely take turns asking questions. The guide mentions that just entering and exiting the cave and ascending and descending takes a heavy toll on many. We noticed on our way down into the caves that there are resting areas for visitors to take breaks before continuing. That way, they would successfully get back to the visitor center. Descending the stairs into the mouth of the cave, we began to notice being enveloped in a damp, moist opening into the earth. I could faintly hear the trickle of water falling gently down the sides of the sheer rock formations that surround the opening of the cave, and noticed the large amounts of moss in the area, enjoying its surroundings. Strangely, the opening we entered is small and so low that we have to avoid hitting our heads. It feels tight and enclosed, and makes some of us understandably nervous that there is so much earth above our heads. Fooled by the tightness of the opening, the rock beneath our feet seems smoothly bumpy, and we are forced to pay attention to both where our feet are and where our heads are so we don't trip or hit our heads. The low, dark opening seems to go on forever. Finally, we entered into a large, open cavern that is only one of the many amazing, gigantic, and beautiful rooms that are accessible in the Mammoth Caves. We are delighted to find a very knowledgeable and animated tour guide in the cave, who tells of the history of the cave with such passion that we are riveted to the information. He tells about the industrious miners and the lives lost in the ingenious mining in an era that had no modern technology to accomplish such a necessary product for fighting a war. We stopped many times to read the information in large dioramas that were placed around the cavern for the visitors to get a sense of history we had stepped into. It was great to see that the history was being preserved for us to experience. Walking through the caves, we got a sense of the people that had been there before us, and could only imagine the conditions that they must have endured. Working long, dangerous hours in a cave lit only by lights no brighter than candlelight. We began our journey back to the surface, and were surprised by how far and deep we had traveled into the earth. The long trip exiting the cave seemed to take much longer than the time it took to get there, and since we have traveled downhill all the way to get into the caves, we forgot that to get out, we have to travel uphill all the way. Now the rest areas on the sides of the path made more sense. Before leaving, we headed to the gift shop. We found the typical touristy items and purchased a couple of things we knew our brother, who couldn't come with us on our trip, would like. We also found a few smaller items for ourselves, but it wasn't the souvenirs that made our trip special. We were glad that we had the opportunity to enjoy a part of our country's history and a beautiful natural and man-made wonder on our trip. Mostly, I remember spending time with my friends and family. The time we spent together is a memory we should all share for a lifetime.